into what should be the final trade line dead frenzy. Yes, trade deadline frenzy from DNVR Avalanche. We're talking Max Domi today. This one is interesting in a lot of ways. He's probably playing over his head in Chicago.
He's 1C.
Is he really a center? But maybe that gives him some flexibility. I don't know. There's a lot of things to get into here with Max Domi. We can bring up his statistics for the year. Obviously pretty good. Not that expensive when it comes to the contract deal. But can he do this in the playoffs is question number one. He does look like he's screaming like that. Look, obviously the playoffs last year with Carolina, he wasn't spectacular.
He didn't do anything. He had one game.
Yeah. So is that a concern for you, or are you willing to overlook that when it comes to a guy having a good year? Do you even believe he's properly a top 6 guy on a team like the Avalanche?
So similar to Henrique, this is a guy we've talked about for several years in terms of potential fit.
He's tough, right? He's tough.
For what it's worth, I'm pretty sure the Avs had a decent offer on the table when he was coming out of Arizona. And it was not, that ended up being a bigger deal involving Christian Dvorak. But so the Avs have had interest, is what I'm saying.
And we know the Avs always get their man.
Well, and they do like to circle back on guys, which, we didn't talk about it in the Dmitry Kulikov video, but that's another guy that we've talked about in the past as somebody that they have liked. But that was a few front office iterations ago.
Yeah.
So we're, I didn't know it was quite as relevant, but with Domi, this group has liked him before. So
right, and you can see why.
When he's a good player, he's a good player.
Right. And I think he does a lot of the things that the Avs, Jared Bednar likes. Ultra try-hard kind of guy.
Willing to mix it up.
Right,
yeah.
right. He's loud, right?
He might actually be loud, though. He
right,
yells.
Right. And so I don't know. Like, this is just an interesting guy. But, Rudo, I think the question of can he do this in the playoffs is the part that makes you pause, because we saw him be put in really an identical situation last year in Carolina, where it's, hey, come be part of the mix and whatever. Now, I think Carolina has different issues as to why that didn't necessarily work out. But, I mean, like, Max Domi really
didn't push them in the right direction.
Really didn't move the needle for them at all. So you sit there and you worry, okay, are you kind of staring down potentially the same thing? Does he move the needle for you on that third line in the same way that a couple of these guys through this video series we've talked about, in the terms of if you have to, if they do end up on your third line, you actually still feel really good about that? Do you feel as good about Max Domi in that situation? Is he too much of a wing to center flex? Are you really solving any problems? If the Avs went out and brought this guy in, I wouldn't not like it. There's just a little bit weirder fit around it, I think, this time around than when we've talked about it in the past.
The one thing I will say about the wing center flex, if you believe he can properly play center, we know he can play wing.
He's played center all year this year.
I agree. But again, Chicago doesn't have a choice but to play him at center.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking, he's taken on 1C. If we could bring up his player card, we could just look at it.
Yeah, it'll tell you.
Look at the competition that he's had.
It's pretty strong.
And he's driven play. He's gotten eaten up defensively.
And that's
where you're like, well, he's not a 1C.
Yeah.
He's
I think every player that we've looked at from Chicago, they're defensive.
Yeah, exactly.
This is our third Chicago player. We had 3 Chicago, 3 Anaheims.
Yep.
Guys coming out of bad environments that are looking for bounce backs where they get put into more appropriate roles and you expect these to normalize and not be extremes. You don't expect it to be 0% defense.
Right.
I do think his ability to play wing and C does give some flexibility. You're not looking at the Ryan O'Reilly situation. You're looking, again, at you may end up with a rotation of guys at 2C. If you move Erod up to that, you can throw Domi on the wing with Newhook at center on your third line. You can do some things there.
Sure.
So there's this thing going on in baseball right now where defense isn't as important as it used to be. And teams are building them full of utility men, guys that play 5 positions.
None of them very well.
They're not great at any position, but they can fill them out, and so they can rotate them and keep them fresh and do different things. And then you end up with team defense that's just not very good.
Sure.
And with Domi, that versatility is a fine selling point. But between JT Compher, Alex Newhook, and Evan Rodriguez, are you just getting too much of what you already have here?
Right.
You're not answering a question. You're just asking a longer one that you already had.
And again, that's why, like with a guy like Taves, I'm less concerned about him moving up and down the lineup because I know what position I'm moving him up and down the lineup. I know if he doesn't solve my 2C problem, he's now my 3C, and I've got guys who are flex players flanking him.
I think you can do the same with Domi there, though, if you wanted to. And if
if he ends up on your third line left wing, was the investment ever really worth it?
And we're getting to the price has to be right here.
Yeah.
You can't be first shouldn't even be in the conversation for this guy.
No, and where, like, with the Avs not having second and thirds available to them
It gets
for
hard.
2 more seasons,
Yeah.
the price I think is a serious. Because how willing are teams going to be to accept second and third round picks from 2025? Because if they are,
if it's the Avs, are you maybe a little bit more inclined to because you say we hope that
They've
3 years
tailed
from
off
now
by
they're
then,
not
yeah.
quite as dominant and we're getting a more reasonable pick?
I don't think so. I think you're looking at it and saying these guys are going to be good for a while. We're just not going to get to use this pick for, like, okay, so we have we get an extra third round pick in 2025. Is this management group even going to be the one making that pick?
I don't think it's that far
So,
down the
I
line,
mean-
but
I mean, you're talking. It will have been that's their 4th draft cycle because they just got hired in this last one, and so
maybe-
you are talking about in that 3 to 4 year range, and then that player probably doesn't even help you for 3 more years after that, maybe 4 or 5.
Right.
Like,
I think
the-
maybe the more realistic conversation here is we had this in the other episode. You start talking about someone like a Ben Myers. Or,
yeah,
I was
because
gonna say, you
if
maybe
you're
gotta-
trying to sell a guy, okay, hey, we're going to sell Max Domi, but the player that we're getting back may not help us until 2030.
Yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense for them.
You know, like you're like, okay.
I get what you're saying, and I agree with you, but I do think that the conversation with a team like this version of Chicago
They are selling so
is still a little bit
hard,
different
yeah.
because they are still on the
Right, but
down. They're
why
not
would
even,
why would they want to take? Let's say the Avs offer a 2nd round pick in 2025.
are you saying just
That. Why would they take that if they could get 3rd round picks in 2023
Well, yeah,
and 2024?
I mean, sure, but I think at that point, if you're talking about that, I'm with Rudo. You are probably talking about we're gonna throw something else in that gets you a little bit more excited in the meantime. I don't think a 2nd round pick in 2025 gets it done for them. Like I don't. That's what you're talking about here. Is
That's
all
where
you
I
have
think
to
the price
offer?
becomes hard for them to meet because
Sure, but I guess my thing is if
teams just may not love that.
you've pursued Domi this many times, if you're circling back saying we really want him this year and the 2025 second is what we have to offer, I'm fine with you throwing in a whatever kind of prospect, a mid to upper tier guy.
What
Because
if you just took that out and you said Olausen?
one like straight across,
up, I'd do
that.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd definitely do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how you guys feel about that. I mean,
And the
because
thing-
Price, I think, is like Domi, the player, is fine. The Avs have liked him. He probably wouldn't hurt them in any meaningful way. How would he fit? We don't really know.
I
But
think he'd be,
how
I
well
think he'd be
and
decent
how
on that second line.
how
Like, I think there's a good
impactful would
fit
he
there.
be? Is all of these
That-
things are
that's a
to be
fair question,
determined
for sure.
All of this is like you're confident that he makes you better, but how much better?
Right.
And then look, how much better is an important part of this when you don't know what the price is.
And see, that's why I'm sitting there. I'm saying if it's Oscar Olausen straight across, I'm sitting there saying, yeah, we feel comfortable. This makes us better this year. We're concerned about this year. How far are you realistically from Oscar Olausen being an impact guy on the NHL
Right.
roster?
2 years.
The Avs just have a better prospect pool when it comes to forwards as well. There are options that they're looking at there. The opposite.
For Ryan Berkeley.
I mean, if they're interested, I'd do that deal.
Yeah, I would do Berkeley. I wouldn't do Olausen.
Really?
Yeah. I just
I
don't
just-
trust Max Domi enough. I don't like the player enough. I don't like the fit enough.
See, I
don't like the
I like the player better than you.
I don't like the inconsistencies he's
think
had in Chicago. The numbers look great, but it's all
I
an
think
opportunity
he can
that's
fit
not repeatable.
really well on a second line where you throw a Nichushkin on the side wing with him and whoever on the other.
I just think for me, it's been too inconsistent. And you look at defensively, he's never been good.
Right, but that's why you have a Nichushkin. You have some of those defensive guys in your top six to help balance out the defensive side.
Yeah, you get a bad defensive player, though. You're going to get a bad defensive player, even if you try and band-aid that over. You're just not getting a guy that's going to help you there. Where you might move him to the wing just to try and limit how much damage he can do in that area of the game. And now you're talking about, all right, well, now he's out of your top six. He's on the wing because this hasn't worked out.
I guess I just have more faith in his offensive ability than you do for him to produce. Certainly in the regular season, I get there's a bit more of a question mark there in the playoffs, and that's a fair reason to not go after this guy.
Well, even in the regular season, though, it's been so inconsistent for him in his career.
It's been up and down.
In the good years, he's been good, but he just does not. He doesn't show up every night. He doesn't show up. His last name is Domi, and he's nothing like his dad. He's not going to bring that.
He's a guy who hasn't had the opportunities like some of these guys have had to play with the very top guys like there are.
I was saying, how many different teams has Max Domi been on at this point?
3.
Is it really just 3?
Yep.
Arizona, Montreal, Chicago.
Yep.
4, I guess. Carolina.
I was going to say, yeah.
He just is the type of guy to me that you put him with the top end that Colorado has, and certainly on the offensive side, I think you will see him excel.
Yeah,
I forgot about him in Columbus.
I was going to say, 5. That sounds way more right. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about his CBJ tenure.
2 years in Columbus, yeah.
So did CBJ.
Well, everyone forgets about CBJ.
So because and now we're talking about like teams have tried this.
Well, but again, I mean, you're talking about Arizona, Montreal, Columbus, and now this iteration of Chicago.
Right.
Sure, teams have tried it, but
there are good players on those teams. I don't
those
know.
Teams, those teams had some of those teams had designs on being competitive. And the reasons why they weren't as good as they were hoping is because Max Domi didn't live up to expectations.
The thing is,
not to put that solely on him.
The setting of expectations is a little different in Colorado.
Yeah, you have to be your absolute best self every day. Otherwise, Jared Bednar's not playing you.
That's true, but you also have Mikko Rantanen, Nathan McKinnon, Val Nichushkin, Gabe Landeskog. You have these guys around you that can help lift up Domi more than I think he's had on other teams.
I agree with that.
And
look, why are you going out and getting a guy that you need lifting up like this?
Well, I think every guy that we've talked about today, you're
lifted
talking
up.
about being elevated by the environment. That's why you're going out and getting them, because you feel like not only do we think they make us better, we think they will perform better here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be moving on from them.
Again, this comes back to, look, if price is not an option, there's 3 guys I think I'd rather have. But if Ryan O'Reilly is priced out of the Avs window, if Adam Henrique, if the Ducks want too much for that guy,
right,
that's when you start having a Max Domi conversation here.
Let's just, for argument's sake, let's just assume the price is like the same.
Is what?
Max Domi, Jonathan Toews.
I'd take Toews.
I think Toews probably.
Yeah.
So all this standing for Max Domi, and you guys still would be.
I really
Taves
like
better.
the guy, but I also understand who he is.
I mean, I was saying I can like
that.
multiple players.
Yeah, well, I mean, Domi's been like more of the guy this year in Chicago than Taves has been, but
right.
I think it's
but to all of your points about inconsistency and knowing what you're going to get, and then the leadership stuff and the intangible and having gone through the runs, like there's other reasons why I would take Jonathan Toews more if all things are equal. But to Rudo's point, if you're let's say Adam Henrique has been moved and you're priced out on Ryan O'Reilly and Jonathan Toews doesn't want to come to Colorado,
your 5th best option or whatever, yeah, I'm down.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think all of us said that there's 2, if not 3 more guys ahead of him, at least on the forward side. But if you kind of look around your options, you say, look, this makes the most sense. We can live with the price. The dollar figure is a lot more palatable. You know Chicago's willing to eat half because they don't care right now about that. We can bring this guy in for $1.5 million and have him make some level of impact in the middle 6.
And I think he's another guy that you're having a conversation if it goes well. Maybe you keep him for that spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
he's young enough.
his age is in that right bracket where you're like, I don't know. I feel similarly about Domi as I do Monahan, where I just think that
I don't think those.
I was going to say very different red flags. For me.
I'm cool with this being somebody else can find out on this one.
So, and I'm with you, but and I guess my thing is, if it's the Avs, I feel comfortable with that move. I'm not.
I feel way more comfortable with Domi than Monahan.
I'll tell
I'm
you,
with you 100% on that.
The Avs have been so good at this over the last few years that whatever decision they make, even if I don't like it today,
you'll just trust
I'll
it.
just be. I mean, look, I didn't like the Georgiev thing over the summer. And it was like, I'm going to completely trust them, and that was a smart decision.
What's so funny to me, and like I know
if they want Domi, I will trust them.
I'm not trying to like beat up on Bronco fans or like that, but it is so funny seeing just the difference in the two fan bases. Everything that this current Avalanche management group has done in the last 5 years has turned to gold. It's all been, almost every move has worked out, all into a Stanley Cup championship. The Broncos have like fumbled through all these moves over the last few years trying to get things back on track. And it's just always funny because any move they make, Broncos fans are like, there it is. That's the one that fixed it. And Avs fans are like, I still can't believe they're making this move. And just the two franchises gone in such opposite directions. Just funny to see where the faith in each fan base lies. It has made me laugh.
Yeah, and I mean, what's fun is that where the Avs have not gotten it right, it hasn't mattered because they haven't made a big mistake.
It's like waivers.
Like,
they're
you're like, oh, tried to Hunt, and then he turns into Dennis Malgin. Like, they make hay there, right? The Tyson Jones, Nico Sturm thing, you're just kind of like, well, it worked out. Like it ended up just fine, right?
Yeah,
like you're like,
it didn't go great for you, and you moved on from him.
Yeah.
Nothing held you
and
up.
you won a Stanley Cup, and we're like, thanks, bye.
And like everybody ended up happy with how you're like, it's fine.
Yeah.
And that's where
except Tyson Jost.
The deadline thing had been such a problem for the Avs for several years.
Yeah. And they knocked it
and
out
it's
of the
so
park.
funny.
Yeah.
They absolutely murder last year. They hit 2 home runs.
Yep.
You'd call Cogliano like maybe a double.
Triple.
I'd say Cogliano was a triple. The speech gets him a triple.
Yeah, gets him to third.
Yeah. Okay, a double, and he talked his way into third.
Yeah. After review.
Yeah, like they threw the ball out of play and he advanced.
Yeah.
So a triple-ish, a double and an advance.
Yeah.
And then a single with the
Also,
Nico Sturm.
you got on base with Nico Sturm.
Maybe a walk is better. You didn't get a hit, but you got on base.
I was gonna say,
you get a walk, so
he gets credit for that assist.
You have you bat 1,000 last year.
Yeah.
In 4 moves, and after years of the deadline being like,
right,
the Avs don't do this very well, and so did last year everything just work perfectly
into place,
or did they do something? Did they have a different approach last year that would lead them? Because Max Domi, I want to bring this back to our guy here. Max Domi is another kind of guy where he's a UFA, but you are having a conversation. We're saying he's young enough. You know, I mentioned this with a Monahan where if it clicks,
can you get
this is a guy that has been around, he's been moving, there's been so much uncertainty where you say if it clicks and it works and it all just feels good, there's an investment in, hey, let's try this again.
Yeah.
The same way that you think with Evan Rodriguez going into free agency this summer, like, hey, are you going to be able to get more money elsewhere? Probably.
But the Avs are the team that made it work
but
for you. Yeah.
Look what a good fit you were here. How can we bridge the gap here, money-wise and years-wise and whatever, to make you comfortable, but to also continue a really good relationship? With Domi, I think you would also have that opportunity, which does make it so that if you do give up a second-round pick or you do give up an Oscar Olausson, this isn't 15 games and you just lit it on fire.
And if it doesn't work, it still looks terrible. But if it does work...
You've seen Tampa do that in recent years where it's, hey, these guys work, and so we're going to fight to keep the guys that work.
Gave an insane contract to Nick Paul, but
Well, and they give him a 7-year deal, not caring about years 4 through 7, knowing that if they keep the cost down for the first 3, they're whatever in those last couple. The cap could be so high we could buy him out. Those are 7 years from now my problem.
Right.
I don't care about this
We've
now.
seen Pittsburgh do it.
Yeah.
Hey, it works here. We're going to do what we can to keep him. And I know they paid a bit of a premium, but Val Nichushkin was kind of the first one to fall in that sense where he
we
probably
were not losing this guy.
Right,
We
right.
were not losing
Right,
him.
we're
and
not
he got an
losing
8-year
him.
deal to do it.
And it's not because he's such an unbelievable player relative to the league, but he fits here unbelievably well. So we aren't losing this guy. So you're starting to see the Avs follow that trend. So again, when you are looking at Max Domi,
Yeah.
you do have that potential where the Avs understand that if it's a fit that works, we're going to keep him.
Yep,
Or
it's
try.
one of the guys. With Puljujärvi, he's an RFA. You're keeping him.
Yep.
You're very likely at least giving him a full year's worth of burn to just figure it all out, and his salary should be low enough. You don't care if it goes great. Maybe give him a multi-year deal. Whatever. Right. But the rest of these guys, the only ones that you do think, hey, maybe this guy could be here for a year or two afterward, would be a Domi or a Monahan.
Yep.
And not, O'Reilly. The way that O'Reilly negotiates,
It seems unlikely.
he's not taking his hometown is his bank,
Yeah.
so that's the only discount he cares about. You're not getting a single cent
well, and that's
cheaper
and
than
that's
what
a
he
dude
wants.
that already has a cup too.
And I don't want it to sound like that's a negative thing. That's just who he is. That's how he's going to be.
Right.
So you're not going to have. There's not going to come into play any of that fit. He's a money is green everywhere, right? Like my money spends as good in any of the NHL cities as it does anywhere else. So you won't have that opportunity. And Taves is maybe a 1-year deal, maybe 2 if you're like totally in love with the
Yeah,
relationship.
if it goes extremely well.
Yeah. And even then, you're
wondering.
I'm
about
not
that
sure.
second
I'm not
year,
sure when his
yeah.
birthday is, so it might be a 35 plus, and you would be really iffy on
Tuesday?
it. So yeah, probably. So anyway, but with Domi, I think this is our last video in the series, so we're kind of wrapping it all up. But with Domi, you are having that conversation of if it goes well, you could extend the relationship, hopefully at a reasonable price. Hopefully less than what Dylan Strome just got in Washington. Yeah. Because that $5 million, $5 million is not a super expensive price tag for a second line center, but the Avs just don't have that.
Yep.
So that's their problem, is that they need to be trying to find some solutions on the cheap here. Guys that are going to outperform those deals. And when you look at a Max Domi, you could certainly feel like.
There's potential for that.
Exactly.
All right. I think that's a good place to end it. This has been our lead up to trade deadline day. On deadline day, we will be live all day on this YouTube channel. So come chill with us. Come watch the trades happen. It's always a fun time as we lose our minds.
It's always a really slow first hour where we're all waking up and kind of just like, oh, this
Super
depth
minor trade
defenseman happened at
And then
7
they
in the morning.
start rolling in and we start cackling at terrible decisions.
And then we start popping off, and then the Avs start doing things, and
Usually more fun than free agency day. More stuff happens.
I would agree.
free agency is like everything happens in 30 minutes,
Yeah.
and it's this huge adrenaline rush,
And
and
then
then there's a 2-hour
nothing.
come down, and
Yeah.
deadline's a lot more fun.
So hope y'all will join us for that. Like and subscribe here on YouTube. If you missed some of the other videos, there's a whole playlist of all of our trade deadline frenzy stuff. You can go watch our thoughts on a number of guys that could be potential Avs targets. We love you, and we will see you next time.